I know I said that the last video was going to be my last Torchlight build video for Season 1, but actually, I got roped back in. I was going to go play Path of Exile, but Torchlight, it pulled me back, and I'm going to end up playing just one more build. And today, the build I have to share with you, if you're anything like me, if you like the Eggman, then you like explosions, you like going fast, you don't really care about doing the bosses, because this build is not designed to do them, then this is going to be a build you probably enjoy. It's very budget, assuming you have Frostbitten Heart Gemma. She is very important to this build, so if you do not have her, I'm afraid this build isn't really going to work out, because one of the biggest things about this build is we're scaling the explosion, the free explosion that we get. It's normally quite an expensive thing to add into a build, but Frostbitten Heart Gemma gets it for free as part of her hero trait. So coming straight on into game, the first thing I want to talk about with this build is the explosions. That's the biggest thing that we're scaling. We want full map coverage with just our Spiral Strike, and the way we're going to do that is by using Icy Ring. And what Icy Ring does is it proliferates when it hits a target. It will then cast another Icy Ring at that target's location, and you combine that with the hero trait that allows you to explode mobs. You're going to get some insane map coverage, and you can just delete bosses by spawning the League mechanic on top of them and using the surge monsters to kill the boss. I wanted this to be mobile friendly, so we are not double spiraling. You can, but to be honest, you don't really need to. All you're doing is holding down right click to spiral as well. Going on into the skills, first of all, we have Spiral Strike with quick mobility, hardened, and critical strike rate increase. Then Force Restart, I have efficient cast on it. Then we have Bloodthirst. This gives us an attack speed mod bonus. Scale it with Mania, and then Bloodbath. Obviously Bloodbath works really well with this because you just keep re-triggering it when you hit something with a Spiral Strike, and then it stacks up to 10 times, eventually being what, 42% increased effect. Same kind of thing for the Mana Boil, because we never reduce ourselves to 0 mana. Well, Mana Boil is just always on, and the Bloodbath once again scales up. And then Soul Encircle gives us a huge amount of spell damage and penetration based on the number of mobs we've killed with it active, and it almost has 100% uptime, just slightly not with the way I currently have the build set up. Our cast on crit setup, precise cast on crit. This is very important. It does a lot more damage. You need to be precise. Icy Ring. And then for support gems, we have Freeze Chance, added cold damage, critical strike rating, and critical strike damage. I have tested some other things out. It's kind of difficult to tell it exactly what is best because we don't really have the tools to do it. The dummy doesn't really help with this build. And now for the actual auras, as instead of just the passive skills, we are using our tried and tested Restrain setup with Selfishness for some incredible aura effect. This means that our precise elemental resistance is actually compensating for pretty much all our resistances. We end up getting, I don't know, like 86% auras. We probably have at least 100% increased aura effect from the build. Elemental Amplification, just for more elemental damage. Energy Fortress for more AS. Ice Imbue for more like coverage. Things explode when they're frostbited. And then Frigid Domain, Magical Source, and Precise Erosion Enhancement. Now you will see here that I have a precise seal conversion. If you do not have this, all you have to do is cut the Fearless. It is what it is. Fearless is just there for a bit of attack speed. You could also use Thunder Spirit if you really want to. I just went with Fearless just for the crit rate and then the attack speed. Just kind of double down on what we want to get out of our Spiral Strike. And now, of course, we have gear, and there are two modifiers that we're really looking for on all our pieces of gear, and that is cooldown recovery speed or any added levels of our cold gems. This is how we're choosing to scale the build. Obviously, cooldown recovery speeds means we're proccing that cast on crit more often, which just means more Icy Rings. And then the plus levels, because we're not stat stacking or anything like that, there's not really that many ways we can scale the damage, but adding in those levels is a great way to do it. So more specifically on the helmet, you do need a sealed mana cost with the way that I have the build set up. You could probably tinker around with your auras a little bit, but I would try and buy a helmet already crafted with this 8% sealed mana. For the chest, we just want ES, one resistance roll. This is the only resistance roll we actually need in the build, and then erosion resistance, because you're going to need a lot of erosion resistance just to cap to make us a bit more tanky. And then for the amulet, we've got two choices. You can either go with a sunlight amulet. I went with for the area. You want to get plus level, spell damage, ES, erosion resistance. We have some attack speed on here because we don't actually get that much attack speed, so you want to try and get as much as you can from your gear. Or we have the illusory ocean silk wintry, and basically what this means is we get an extra focus blessing and we're triggering our curse, because one of the difficult things I've found on this build is fitting in that curse. You'll have noticed from the skill set we don't actually have one, so this amulet is a great way of doing it. I haven't included it in the build just because it's a bit more expensive, but if you do have the money, then getting that amulet and just finding one of your rare pieces to put your cold resistance roll on to counteract that minus 40% cold res from the unique amulet is certainly a good way to go. Gloves, I just went with Sage's Insight. They give you a good amount of ES, plus 1 elemental spell skill level, some elemental damage. The cast speed does nothing for us. You could probably craft a better pair of gloves, but again, I wanted this to be more budget friendly, so that's what we went with there. The most important thing you want to get on your Infinity is off the beaten track. I kind of tried to hit this home last build, but aura stacking is just so phenomenally good that off the beaten track just makes it so you can run all these support gems on top of your auras and not consume all of your mana, so you can actually run more auras. And then for boots, I haven't even finished crafting my boots, as you can see. Just ES, erosion resistance. You can get aura effect. Aura effect is actually a technique mod on the boots, so this is a good place to get some aura effect. And then you can actually get cooldown recovery in where I've got the move speed if you really want to. And then for rings, I only have 2 stat rings right now. I went with End of Confusion, spell damage per focus blessing, and another focus blessing. You could also get like crit damage per focus blessing if you really wanted. You could get multiple spell damage rolls. The sky's the limit, but that's what I have on both of mine. Primarily using a sacrificial dagger because it gives us access to cooldown recovery speed and plus 2 spell skill level. And then finally onto the shield. So you just want ES, attack speed, crit, and elemental damage. Again, you don't need tier 1 modifiers like I have. This build will be perfectly capable of clearing the T7 maps without tier 1 modifiers. As I said though, right now, look at me. This isn't for bossing, alright? It can clear maps like the best of them. It is not a bosser, you've been warned. And while I'm warning you, I'm going to warn you again. Click the like button, click the subscribe button, I love you. If you liked all these build guides I've done this league, do that for me. How about that, eh? Alright, now on to talents. The talents that we elected to go with. We're obviously in Goddess of Knowledge. All these talent trees will be linked down below as typical, and we went with Chili, Burning Touch, Frostbitten, Extreme Coldness, and we actually ended up going into Ranger and we picked up Fluke and Impending. There is an alternative method you can actually do here. You could go Warlock. I haven't tested this, but theoretically it could be really good. You would take Impending on your Infinity, and then you would go into Warlock, and you can get access to the Merciless node, which gives you attack speed and cast speed is applied to cooldown recovery at 15% of its value, which is really good for this build because cooldown is so important for our cast on crit. So that is something you can do. And then there's tons of ways you could min-max this if you have like a box or something like that. But for the purposes of this video, that is the gear and that is the talents. Hero traits. The big focal point is the Icebound Blade. This is what's going to give us these big explodes. Bone Piercing Frost. In the 62, we want minus 1% elemental resistance per 12 frostbites. Beautiful. Frost Tides, Frost Bloodline, and then Frost Field. All of this basically comes together to mean we just get complete map coverage, as you've seen in the footage. And then for the support gems on the Cold Pulse, we went with added cold damage and cold piercing.
Oh, that is a good league mechanic. There's gonna be a lot of FEs. Oh my god. You know, sometimes it hits just right. Alright, how many are we gonna get? Jesus. Keep going. Keep going. Okay, dude.